Welcome to the CouchScouts Podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the CouchScouts Podcast. I am your host, Matt Cooper. With me are my co-hosts, Matt Rupert.
How you doing, my man?
And Matt Jackson.
What's going on, guys?
Not much. It's been a fun day. I kind of had a lazy day at work. I didn't really work much today, if I'm being totally honest. I had my FFT podcast earlier this morning, and then I went and saw the new Fantastic Four this afternoon, which was pretty good.
What is that? Are we on Fantastic? Are we on Fantastic Four 17 at this point? Which
it's the third reboot in my lifetime that I can remember, but it was pretty good. It felt like a return to form for Marvel, and they needed it. So I enjoyed the movie. What about you guys? Y'all having a good day?
Well, life is busy, but I am so happy. This is always my getaway to talk fantasy football and to talk football in general because life is so crazy for me being the only pastor on staff right now. So.
Yeah, I heard your kids were generous enough to share a cold with you.
They were, yeah. So if you guys hear me go off camera and mute my mics, it's because I am blowing my nose, and nobody wants to see that. So
nice,
totally fair. Yeah, been a busy day at work. I feel like I've been plugged in my seat here, working all day. For those that don't know, I work at a startup for my day job, so it can be pretty busy.
You got to go out of your way to get your steps in. When you work
absolutely. Absolutely. I think I got about 13 done today.
Okay. That's a lot of steps, man.
Had some lightsaber fights with my son after dinner to get a little bit of cardio.
Okay, so that's worth more than 13 steps right there. But
yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we are not here to talk about our personal lives, but we are continuing a divisional series where we're going through each division in the NFL, looking at off-season questions, players to watch, teams that make a splash, and more as you prepare for the start of your dynasty seasons. That's right. We are covering these topics from a dynasty fantasy football perspective. So as much as we are NFL fans and we love the NFL, and we'll talk a little bit about, which teams do we think will be good or whatever, really our heart with these shows is always to tackle it from a dynasty perspective so that you guys can take away some actionable intel and advice to help you win your leagues. On tonight's episode, we are looking at the NFC South, home of me and Rupert's very own Carolina Panthers. So in case you are wondering who else is in the NFC South, we have the Atlanta Falcons, the New Orleans Saints, the Carolina Panthers, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So as we have been doing throughout this series, our first section here, we will talk about off-season questions to discuss and we'll have one for each team. So we'll start with the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Penix has made it clear that he wants Kyle Pitts to be a focal point of the offense. Does Pitts finally meet the lofty expectations, or is this another subpar year? I'll throw it to you first, Rupert.
No. He is not going to be the focal point of the offense. Drake London's going to be the focal point of that offense. And I will say this. I do think he's going to be better than the disappointment that he was last year. But to be honest, how much farther down could he go other than not playing at all? I think he may be serviceable, in that kind of Pat Freiermuth kind of range, where it feels gross starting him, but it's better than nothing. I just don't see any way that he's going to be launched into the top 5 of his position at this point. We just had too much experience just kind of seeing who he is at this point. And it just doesn't seem like he's worked enough at his craft to be physical enough and explosive enough out of his breaks to really be that weapon that we hoped that he was going to be coming out of college.
Jackson, you're the one who put this on the show sheet, so give me your thoughts here, man.
I'll put it on the show sheet more as a joke, but how many years are we going to do this? Right? Like we do this every single year. Like is Kyle Pitts finally going to break out, and he never meets expectations? Like we always leave the season going, man, that was kind of gross to have him on your roster, and he didn't do what everybody thought he was going to do. And I really do think that this year is more of the same. Like, will he get a little more involved? Like, yeah, I think that's possible, but he's looked atrocious the last few years. So anything would kind of be, as Rupert was saying, a step in the right direction. Like at best, I think he's option number 3 on that team. I mean, Bijan is going to get his, Drake London's going to get his, and at best you're an option 3. And like I don't know if that team is good enough, and I don't think that team is good enough for him to be anything more than like I like that Pat Fryermuth range that Rupert was talking about. That's almost feels like his ceiling, not the floor for somebody like him.
Yeah, I'm not falling for this again. I don't think I actually have fallen for it that much. I've never been a huge Kyle Pitts guy for his price. I mean, obviously, I liked him after his rookie season like everybody else did, but the prices were so exorbitant that you couldn't really buy him at that point. And so I think I've had like maybe one Kyle Pitts share on any of my dynasty rosters ever. And I don't see that changing at this point. Look, it's been an off-season practice together and maybe rework the offense around Penix and all this kind of stuff. But we did have a 3-week sample size of Kyle Pitts and Michael Penix playing together. And Kyle Pitts played a relatively small percentage of snaps because down the stretch, second half of the year, the team just stopped trusting him and stopped putting him on the field. And he was pretty much unusable for fantasy. I think one of those 3 weeks he did get a touchdown, and so he barely cleared 10 fantasy points. But the other 2 weeks he like wasn't targeted, didn't do anything. So yeah, no, I'm not interested in Kyle Pitts, and I'm not.
When Jonnu Smith
I'm not
is
buying into any.
When Jonnu Smith is having a better season than you are, that tells me all I need to know about your upside.
Well, I mean, we said that, but then like Jonnu Smith went and crushed it for the Dolphins too. So, but yeah, I think in hindsight, it's like, yeah, when they were on the same team, Jonnu was the better tight end, and maybe Arthur Smith should have been given more credit, and maybe Jonnu Smith should have been playing the whole time. And really, it could have been ownership saying you need to play Pitts. We spent the number 4 pick in the draft on him. But all right, that's enough. You guys have heard us talk about this before. If you were here a few weeks ago when we were going for positional buys and sells, I talked about Pitts there too. So let's move on to our Carolina Panthers. I am a North Carolina native and current South Carolina resident, and I know Rupert and I met in college at NC State University. Go Wolfpack! And we are both diehard Panthers fans, something that we have bonded over the years. More recently, it's mostly been like bonding through shared suffering, but
mutual trauma.
We are Carolina Panthers fans. So here's the question. With the additions that the Panthers have made on offense, where do you envision Bryce Young finishing in quarterback rankings this season? I'll throw it to you first this time, Jackson.
So honestly, like I value him, especially with the steps that he took this last offseason. Like we've talked about this before. And I've said this before, he responded to a benching right where you would have anticipated or like wanted him to respond to being benched. He came back in after that benching and just lit the season, did everything that you would want him to do as a quarterback. I value him right now as a high-end QB2. Like looking at some of the rankings right now, you got Kyler Murray at 13, you got Baker at 14, Cam Ward at 15, Brock Purdy at 16. Like, I think right there in the range of like 13 to 15 is kind of where I could see him finishing at right now, just based on where those guys are currently going. Fun fact, when he was coming out of college, he was going as high as like QB, I think 3 or 4. I don't think he returns to that sort of form, but I think a high-end QB2, after this season is well within the range of possibilities if Ted McMillan can come in and be the guy that everybody thinks he's going to be.
Rupert?
I'm in lockstep with you there, Jackson. I have him in that 12 to 15 kind of range. I can see a world where he ends up being like a QB1 overall with like a little bit of rushing sprinkled in, like 40 yards a game on scrambles. Though the weapons this year in Carolina is vastly superior to what they've had in the past. And we'll talk about that later, but just the upgrades they have with Ted McMillan, bringing in Hunter Renfrow, I think was a very underrated signing, a guy that really meshes well with Bryce's game. And I think just another year in Dave Canales' offense and getting more familiar with everything so that he can process stuff even faster, I think just going to be really beneficial for him. And it's hard to put him in that QB1 conversation just because there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the league right now. It's a really fun time for the position. And but even with that, last year, I was watching Brett Coleman video today on the Panthers, and he pulled up one of the stats that Bryce Young was like 11th in the league as a passer against pressure, which I think really speaks volumes to how much he grew last year. So really excited to see what him and that offense are able to do this year.
I think the under the radar thing that they did this offseason too is the offensive line help that they went out and got him. Like that's going to be a huge step in keeping him on his feet so he can do what we think he can do, right?
Yeah, I won't belabor the point too much because you guys hit all the main points here. But yeah, it just seemed like the game slowed down for him second half of last year. Actually, if you pull up weeks 8 through 18, which I believe week 8 was when he took back over for Dalton as a starter and started the rest of the year. Weeks 8 through 18, he was QB 12 for that stretch. So he was a low end QB1. And I do think, probably agree with you guys, that high end QB2 is probably more likely. But, you know, I think because of his size, he's viewed as like maybe limited upside or like not a runner. And he's not like Mike Vick out there by any means. I mean, he was outrunning guys more in college than he's been able to in the NFL. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He does have some moves, some mobility to him. He's not a statue. He needs to limit how much he runs because he's small and you don't want him to get crushed. But I think he had 6 rushing touchdowns on scrambles last year, which like that's a significant, like he's not a non-contributor there. He might be due for some regression. We'll see, because the yards don't necessarily match the touchdown output. But like he had a 23-yard touchdown run at one point against the Cardinals, I believe. So it's not like he was just out there like running it in from the 1-yard line or doing a bunch of tush pushes or whatever. So yeah, I think he does have some mobility to his game, which does give a little bit of floor and a little bit of upside. And he's, you got to remember that what he was doing last year when he finished his QB 12 down the stretch was with Adam Thielen as his best wide receiver. You know, you had Xavier Legette, who isn't good and at least wasn't ready. I mean, athletically, he's got some upside, but we all knew he was raw and a developmental guy coming in. And then you had like undrafted Jalen Coker, and then you had Adam Thielen, who's in his mid-30s and just not very fast at this point of his career, like not a lot of explosiveness. So yeah, it's impressive what he was able to do second half of last year. And I think he's kind of getting slept on because he's with the Panthers and because, you know, they're not a big market. They're not on TV a lot. People love to make fun of them, which I get, you know, but it's like every ESPN article you read, you know, they're going to do an NFL team's power ranking and you're going to find whatever North Carolina team down there in the 30s just because that's what they do. But I think Bryce Young deserves some respect. I think he's going to be the franchise quarterback moving forward. I think he's figured things out. So I'll echo everything that you guys said there. Let's move on to our third team here, and we're going to be talking about the New Orleans Saints. And the question here is, how will the addition of Kellen Moore play an impact on Chris Olave? And I'll throw it to you first, Rupert.
Unless Kellen Moore's going to strap on the helmet again and start playing quarterback for the Saints, I don't see it really having any kind of impact on Chris Olave. This quarterback room is just the worst in the league. Can't really put it any other way. So I think Olave is just going to be kind of fighting for his life to get catchable balls and have a functioning offense out there. I do like their wide receiver room with Shaheed and Olave, but without a quarterback there, their O-line has suffered some hits this offseason. With the rest of the dysfunction, it seems like with the organization, I'm just not really going to plant my flag on anyone with the Saints this year.
Yeah, let's be honest. They're in the Arch Manning sweepstakes, right? Like they're pretty much going to be the worst team in the league this year. Hate that for them. Couldn't have happened to a better team. But right now, like Rupert was saying, right? I mean, unless he's going to strap on the helmet, like their quarterbacks are Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck. And none of those guys moved the needle for me at all. It's important to know Chris Olave did have 44 catches for 400 yards and 1 touchdown on half a season. So he is coming back from injury. So, I mean, he should do better than that. I don't know if he's going to be the, perennial 1,000-yard, 1,200-yard receiver that he's been the last 2 years to start his career. The target should be there, but I just how many of those balls are going to be on target, and how good is this team going to be? They're going to be playing from behind a lot, so I mean maybe the opportunity's there, but I don't think Kellen Moore is going to help as much as people think that he would.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you guys. I will say from a historical standpoint, when you look at wide receiver ones on Kellen Moore's teams, when he was with the Cowboys, Amari Cooper finished as a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. When he was with the Chargers, Keenan Allen had a career year. So, I mean, he knows how to get the ball, especially to these like technical route running types like Olave is, which is encouraging. Again, like you said, he can't get out there. He can dial up all the right plays. He can, do a bunch of, stuff where Chris Olave is the primary target read, first read look, but he can't get out there and throw the ball himself. So, yeah, it's a valid concern about the quarterback play. And of course, Olave's health is always going to be a question mark. But I think the opportunity should be there with volume. And I do think Olave is a good enough player that he should be a good usable fantasy asset this year as long as he's healthy. So let's move to our final team here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the question is, how much run does Emeka Egbuka get in year one in a crowded wide receiver room? And I'll go first this time. And I think, especially with this news that Godwin had a second surgery in the offseason to kind of clean up some of what they didn't get the first time. And it does not sound like he's going to be ready for week one. The reports are really like nobody's given a timetable. Everything seems super vague. Like I don't get good vibes about Chris Godwin's health. It seems like it might be worse than they're letting on. I think they knew that when they took Egbuka in the first round. And everybody else who didn't know that was like, oh my gosh, they already have Godwin and Evans and they just signed Godwin to an extension. Why are they spending a first round pick on Egbuka? And I think the whole time the Buccaneers just knew that Godwin wasn't going to be available to them. That's my take on it. And literally there could not be more camp buzz about Egbuka. Like everybody is talking him up. So I think he's good. I think he's the most pro ready. From our scouting evaluation, I think we said that. I think we said he was the most pro-ready wide receiver day one coming into the NFL. So, yeah, Egbuka, I think, will get a lot of run. They already ran a lot of 3 wide receiver sets anyway, and he can play any position on the field. Like if Godwin comes back, you need him to play the X, the Z, the slot. Like he can do all of it. So, you guys have any other thoughts to add to that?
No, I mean, like he's been getting so many raves in camp, especially from Baker. Like, he might be one of Baker's favorite receiving options right now, just based on everything, all the videos that I've seen of him talking. And he's already pro ready. Like, as you said, he's going to be a stud. He's going to get a lot of run. And I'm excited. This is kind of a teaser, but for what I'm going to say when we talk about players, but he's one of the ones that I'm most excited to watch this upcoming season.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add there. Like you said, Cooper, they had to have known this back at the draft that Godwin already had this second surgery. They're not really planning to get as much use out of him this year, so that explains the pick and the confusion from most people in the fantasy community. But like you said, just there's not been one even mediocre thing that I've seen about Abuka this offseason. It's just been all like the highest praise. So really excited for all the shares I have, and I wish I had more.
Yeah, I've got some shares too, and we might not have to be as patient with those shares as we initially thought after the draft. And 2 out of the 3 of us had him ranked above Luther Burden. I'll just throw that out there.
Well, at me next time, Cooper.
At Matt Jackson. All right.
Me next time.
Well, that
look,
is
AI's already taking its shots at me today, Cooper. You might as well take some more.
Yeah, we had an AI transcribe our podcast from last week, and it said Cooper's analytical approach balances Jackson's gut reactions. Jackson's out here catching strays, like
balances Jackson. He shoots from the hip, and who knows if he's going to tell you the right thing or not.
All right. Well, that is as good a time as any to take a quick break before we get to our next section. And we do want to let you know about the great resources that we have at CouchScouts.com. So CouchScouts.com, we have one-on-one consultations where you can schedule 30 minutes with us to, go over a dynasty roster of your choosing, and we'll help you develop a personalized strategy. We have a rookie guide with over 70 prospects in there, the ultimate cheat sheet to dominating your rookie draft. And I'll tell you too, we just had an owners meeting a couple nights ago, just dreaming up stuff to put in the pipeline to add to the product. And I can tell you, we're not going to increase our prices, but we're going to add the value. We're going to pack that thing with even more value than it's already got. So you can join for as little as $50 for a year, and that's less than $5 a month. I think that's an absolute steal for what we're offering in these packages. And I will say too, we're running a promo right now. So we have our 100th podcast episode coming up in 4 weeks. And in the lead up to that, I said this last week, but in case you missed it, if you leave us a 5-star review on any podcast platform, and you can leave it on more than one if you want, but any podcast platform, you leave us a 5-star review, you email me or DM me on Discord, and those things will both be in the show notes with a screenshot showing that you did that. You're going to be entered into a contest. We're going to be giving away 1 free annual membership, and we are going to be giving away some merch as well. So definitely get in on that. And so far, if you were to do that, your odds of winning would be pretty good, because I think it's only been about 5 people, and we still have about a month, but it's only been about 5 people that have sent me a screenshot so far. So, pretty good chance that you would win something. So definitely get in on that. So, all right, let's continue on with the podcast here. And the next section is we're going to be talking about players that we are watching this upcoming season. And Jackson, you already kind of teased this, and we were just talking about this team, so I'll let you go first here.
Yeah, so the guy or guys that I chose, it's twofold here. I'm excited to watch Baker Mayfield and Emeka Egbuka. Baker, who a lot of guys thought was dead in the water, right? I mean, you were looking at a back end QB2, not a lot of upside there. Well, what does he do except go and finish the season with 4,500 yards, which is good for third in the league, tied for second with 41 touchdowns to 16 interceptions, like top end QB1 numbers. So what I'm excited to see is with that offense, it feels like they've unlocked a new Baker, like a Baker that's having fun, a Baker that is just slinging the ball and doing what he was doing in college. Now they've lost Liam Cohen. Like, how does that affect Baker? It's all interesting things that I'm watching, but can he go and repeat that? And then I was watching the New Heights or listening to the New Heights podcast with Jason and Travis Kelce, and they had Baker on just talking. And man, the way that this guy talks about Emeka Egbuka, saying that he can play all over the field. There's not a position he can't play. He comes in, has such a strong work ethic. Like as Rupert was saying, there's not a bad thing that you hear out of camp about him. He's just a professional that goes to work. So like that connection, I'm just so excited to watch. I'm a Baker fan. Years ago, I was leading the Baker Stan fan club. Like, just a huge Baker fan. So I'm really excited for him. Love the success that he's having. I'm excited to see what happens next.
Yeah, you have been a Baker fan for as long as I've known you, and I'll give you props too, because I think when everybody else had left him for dead, like maybe this was just foolish blind optimism because you liked the guy, but it worked out because he certainly has had a career resurgence. I was not a big fan, and he came to our Carolina Panthers and stunk up the joint. So, yeah, he's been a surprise to me, but you were on that the whole way. And I know you're also an Ohio State fan too. So that's a double whammy there for two guys that you want to cheer for. Just, keep in mind, we're Panthers fans here. Okay. They're going to play us twice. And,
so he can do good, just not too good during those two games, right?
Yeah. Just tone down the Bucks love a little bit. All right. But I'm going to stick with the Bucks love because for my player that I'm watching this upcoming season, I put Bucky Irving. And this is not so much of a watching to like monitor a volatile situation for fantasy. This is more just like, man, I want to watch this guy play. He's so fun to watch every time. Like I think a lot of people, and not everybody is a tape grinder. Some people are stats guys. Some people are whatever. This isn't to throw shade, but a lot of people that don't watch a lot of Bucks games or aren't, tape grinders, I've heard the narrative out there that like, oh, he's an undersized day 3 pick. They're going to replace him, sell high while you still can, all this kind of stuff. And I just don't view it that way. I think he's a stud. I think the tape in college showed that. I think the tape with the Buccaneers last year showed that. I think the production down the stretch as he basically took over fully as the guy showed that. So coming into this season, how much of a workload does he continue to get? Because he is smaller, but at the same time, like he was taking some big workloads towards the end of last year and he was doing well with it. So Rachaad White is still on the team. Is there still, is Rachaad White in a committee with him, or is he just more of like give him a breather every now and then? Can he keep up the like 20 fantasy point per game output that he was putting up towards down the stretch of last year? I think he can. And I think he's going to be well on his way to earning a second contract and being that exception of a day 3 pick that doesn't get replaced, similar to what we saw today with Kyron Williams. So, Bucky Irving is a player that I'm excited to watch this upcoming season. And it says a lot that I didn't choose a Carolina Panther. So I will throw it to you, Rupert, because you did choose a Carolina Panther like a good and faithful fan.
Here to serve. I went with Xavier Legette as someone to watch that I'm very intrigued because to me, what the Panthers have done is what they should have done last year, and have Legette as like a number 2 or big slot. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about them drafting McMillan, was that he can be your alpha X, and then you can kind of move Legette around, get him on worse cornerbacks, get him with free releases where he can just show off his athleticism, run away from, a slot corner on a crossing route on mesh, outrun the guy, turn the corner for a 60-yard touchdown, like show off that 4.39 speed that he has. I'm really excited to see how they deploy him this year and see if maybe, he can really step into that role and be like a solid wide receiver 2 for a team. As the guy that they traded up to get in the first round last year. None of us really liked that pick because it was going to be him as the
because
alpha.
he wasn't a first round talent.
Yeah.
What you mean? Cooper loved that pick.
No.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how this plays out this year with him not having to be the wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he needs to be a more complimentary piece, and now he gets to be. And it would be nice if our first round pick was like at least somewhat usable. I mean, because we've had a rough stretch there with oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name. The LSU kid, Terrace Marshall.
He's getting a lot of buzz in Eagles training camp, by the way.
Yeah, whatever. And then Jonathan Mingo shortly after that. So yeah, I don't have high hopes for Leggett, but if he could at least be like a useful starting wide receiver for the Panthers, even if he's not super fantasy relevant, that would be nice. I would appreciate it. He's a likable guy. I like his accent. I like him. He's just so country. Every interview. If you've never watched an Xavier Leggett interview, you need to go look it up because the dude is hilarious.
I want him to be a star so bad. I need all the Leggett content I can get.
That's right. All right, so let's move on. Our next section, we're going to be talking about what team do you envision surprising people the most? And I have a suspicion that we're all going to say the same team, but I'll throw it to you first, Jackson.
Yeah, so for as much as I was glazing on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers earlier, I do think the Panthers surprised the most people. Like, look, they finished pretty well below 500 last year, but they are trending in the right direction. We've already spent a lot of time talking about Bryce Young, and I think for good reasons, right? Bryce Young, he took massive steps in development, and they added pieces to the puzzle to help him. They've also added some key pieces. We didn't talk about this earlier, but on defense as well to help in that defensive secondary and in the pass rush. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. And honestly, they're the team that I probably like the most to contend with the Bucs for that NFC South title. Like I think it's possible that they can do it with the trends in the right direction that they're having.
No
Rupert,
surprise,
is that
I went
also
with
the
the
team?
Panthers.
Yeah.
Yeah, no surprise I went with the Panthers as well. I tried so hard to come up with an argument for another team, and I just couldn't do it. Again, I watched Brett Coleman on the Bootleg football podcast today talk about the Panthers this year and how he thinks they're going to be a surprise wildcard team. And I kind of have the same feeling. Just looking at the improvements that they made this offseason, right? Last year, their wide receiver 1's Adam Thielen, Leggett's is number 2, and wide receiver 3 is David Moore. This year, they have Tet McMillan, Xavier Leggett. You got Adam Thielen, Hunter Renfrow, Jalen Coker. So there's just a lot more weapons on that offense. They improved the offensive line more. The big thing is they had the worst defense in the league last year, 32nd overall, and they spent like over $100 million on the defensive line, just getting some mammoths up there to rush the passer and stop the run. So I think if they can just get to the middle of the pack on defense, in that 14 to 17 range, even, I think it's them in a playoff spot.
Yeah, of course I'm going with the Panthers too, and you can call it homerism, and I wouldn't blame you. But I also look, I am not a Penix guy. I'll talk about the Falcons in a minute. I really don't think that the Falcons are going to come out and be this surprise dark horse team. And, if the Bucs are good, it's not going to surprise anybody because we expect them to be. And the Saints, they're a dumpster fire right now. So I think almost by default, it's the Panthers. But I also agree with you guys that they did beef up the offensive and defensive lines. That was a high priority for them. And the game's won in the trenches. So, tackling that in free agency in the draft was huge. Plus, giving Bryce a true number one and Ted McMillan obviously helps a lot too. So, yeah, for all the reasons that you guys said, and I think Chuba Hubbard is a good player. I think he kind of goes underrated, and people kind of talk about him like he's just this, jag that gets volume because they don't have anybody else, and so he puts up some fantasy points, but like not a good real life running back. And I would contend that he passes the eye test and is a good player. So yeah, I think they've got a pretty well-rounded offense coming in this year, and I'm excited to see what the team can do. So that's a natural transition into which team will leave us the most disappointed. And I will throw it to you, Rupert.
I'm actually going with the Bucks here. And I think it's because people think that they're going to be one of the better teams in the NFC, not just the NFC South, the NFC overall. I think their offense is going to be fine. I think their defense is going to suffer a bit this year. They lost some good players in the secondary the last 2 seasons, really. So I think they're going to get thrown on a lot this year, losing their safeties and cornerbacks. I just don't think they did enough, and it's a bit of misuse of some assets with signing Godwin to a $66 million contract, then using a first round pick on a wide receiver. So I think they just have spent a lot of money. My favorite offseason move is they got Hassan Reddick, but he's an older player now. So they got someone that can rush the passer, but I still think they have enough on defense to really help them make a deep playoff push.
Yeah, I don't, it's funny, us fantasy players, we only know offense. So that's what we talk about. And it's like, yeah, if you look at that Bucks offense, there's no reason to think they're not going to be great this year, but the defensive side matters too, for sure. Jackson, who do you got here?
Yeah, so I went with the Falcons. And that pick is purely based on all the hype that you see surrounding Falcons camp right now. Media and really a lot of fantasy owners are hyping up Michael Penix like he's going to be this really great startable quarterback on your roster. And I don't know that that's going to be the case. I'm not a big Michael Penix truther. I wasn't when he came out of college from Washington. And pair that with Kyle Pitts is Kyle Pitts, right? I think Drake London is fine, but I mean that team I think is not in a position to succeed this year. I think, but where the expectations are that they're going to win the NFC South, like make a playoff, like get a playoff spot, like I just don't see it. Like that starts for me with the quarterback position, and for me, like Michael Penix is just not somebody that really moves the needle for me at all.
Yeah, I also chose the Falcons, and I think again, this is where our show is going to be accused of homerism, and I will throw out there that Jackson is not a Panthers fan. Jackson is an Eagles fan, even though he lives in North Carolina. I don't know. That's a little questionable in my book, but that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. But yeah, I mean, look, it really comes down to Penix for me too. I know that he's getting a lot of hype, and I think there are good arguments to be made for him in terms of like if you're a believer, it's not like it's crazy to think he can be a good NFL quarterback. I personally think that the Falcons overdrafted him. I think from a fantasy perspective, he's a total statue. And so you mentioned, a lot of people think he's going to be a good starting quarterback. He's being drafted as a QB2, like somebody that you can trust and rely on and start week after week after week. And I'm just going to say, if I was a contender, I would feel extremely nervous about that. Even as small of a sample size as it was, in 3 starts last year, 2 of them were pretty poor from a fantasy perspective. So, he's got a whole offseason. We hope to see some improvement there. He showed good chemistry with London. And I think he can be good enough to support Drake London from a fantasy perspective. But yeah, overall, like I don't know. Like I like Bijan and I like Drake London, and that's kind of about it. I'm not overly excited about anything else on the Falcons team on offense or defense. So, yeah, they're a popular pick, but they were last year too. It was like, oh man, like Kirk Cousins, he's going to be the missing piece, and they're going to, he's going to unlock Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan, and that offense is going to be so good. And, now it's like, here's our next hope of a savior that we can make excuses for all these guys and just keep blaming the quarterback every year. But yeah, I am not overly bullish on the Falcons either this year, and I think they are going to leave us disappointed because I think honestly, you listen to a lot of podcasts, they might have gone 3 for 3 saying Falcons for the team that would be the most surprising, and here we are 2 out of 3 saying they're going to be most disappointing. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. So, Rupert, you got any thoughts you want to add to that?
I almost went with the Falcons as well. I just wanted to switch it up. I'd say the same thing the entire time. Penix looked better than I expected to last year. But I don't know. I'm just not sold. So I agree. I think there's just too much hype without enough substance.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for our show. Again, make sure to join our free Discord. The link will be in the show notes. It's a great community of people. We love getting to know the people that listen to our podcast. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you do, send me a screenshot or an email, and I'll get you entered into our contest here for some giveaways for our 100th episode in a couple of weeks. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you